Welcome back to Let the Journey Begin. We have a special episode today. We've crossed past 100 episodes, and as a result, we decided to show the full team of RSF by cycling in some of our behind-the-scenes members. So this week, we have Ariel Gale from the Maria Group. Her and Vito help us similar to how Alfred helps Batman, which I feel is relevant with the new Batman in theaters. And they do a lot of things behind the scenes that everybody has seen, but nobody has seen the players. So, Ariel, welcome on board. This is your first time joining us.
Yes.
Don't be shy. There's no need for stage fright. Fortunately, our audience is very friendly. They're not going to throw tomatoes or, yank you off the stage. So you have nothing to be afraid of today.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for the great introduction.
Yeah,
I'm excited to be here.
I'm glad you are here. And we also have a great guest, which I find to be extra special since between Ariel and I, we don't know her. Jason slid her over to us to have as a guest. And we're very grateful to have you here. And I'm even more excited to learn more about you. So, Danielle, thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So before we get into things, just want to learn a little bit about you. You told us before that you had some roots in Chicago. Are you from California originally?
Nope. Born and raised in Chicago. I've been out here for about 13 years now.
Okay. So you got a little bit acclimated. You've been here long enough. It's not like you just came in the last wave and your license plate's probably a California plate at this point, right?
California plate, but Chicago Cubs holder.
That's okay. That's okay.
We got to represent.
I see plenty of California plates with Patriots holders or Seahawks. So we're totally used to out-of-state fans. But no, that's awesome. And we're really happy to have you here today and learn about you. And it all predicates off of one very special question. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Gosh, there were two things I wanted to be.
Okay.
I wanted to be a weather woman, and I also wanted to be a flight attendant.
Okay. I feel like they're very different, but they have some similarities. So why one versus the other?
I have a fascination with weather. I'm always checking my phone. I always want to know what the weather is in every single state. Like I've been to, on your phones when you've got the weather app and you just keep swipe. I mean, I've got like 20 cities on there. I don't know. I've just always had that fascination with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that. And then what about the flight attendant?
Just traveling. I'm a Pisces. I'm a dreamer. Like I'm always about like, where am I going to next? Where can I go that I've never been?
Okay. So what's the most interesting place you've been to then?
Most interesting place I've ever been to was Ibiza.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That was really, really cool.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll probably get to some touching on that. But in between wanting to be a flight attendant and a weather reporter, what happened from there?
Gosh, life happened.
Okay.
Life happened. I started dating my husband at the time at a very young age, and we were together for 12 years. And it just kind of changed. Your outlooks change, and what you want to do changes. And I ended up going to beauty school, which I'm so thankful I have because I've made a great career out of doing that. But yeah, and then kids, I have two girls.
Okay.
So all that got in the way.
A lot of life.
A lot of life.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate.
Yeah.
I know, Ariel, you're in a relationship and I'm in one too. And in getting in a relationship, there are certain, call them boundaries that you let slide. And there are certain habits that you pick up, both positive and negative sometimes. It's a matter of discerning between the two and making sure you're picking the right ones or the right partner, so to speak, right? Would you say that the relationship attributed to your path leading to you entering into recovery, or was it more of the life and he was just along for the ride?
Gosh, looking back, I would say he was the one that was struggling very, very much. He passed 13 years ago in January from addiction. And in our relationship, later, before he passed away, he was diagnosed with bipolar. And I always knew because the highs were very high and the lows were very lows. But I was young and I kept holding on to those highs as being, in a relationship with somebody with bipolar. I had no idea what, was going on. And then we had children, and we ended up moving to Las Vegas. We lived there for about 2 years. And that's when it was right when the opioid pandemic really started. And that's basically what happened to him in a very, very short period of time. I mean, I'm talking, less than a year. Just the trying to get him help. He didn't want to get help. He thought he was okay. And just that back and forth, trying to get him into some type of program, and he would get into a program and then he'd try to figure out a way to get out. And ultimately, he passed away from it. And so, yeah, it was very, very difficult because at that point I had 2 little girls and I just didn't know how to live life.
Gotcha.
Can we back up a little? Can you tell us a little bit about the relationship? Was addiction an issue throughout the entire relationship? Was it towards the end? When did it get so bad for you guys?
He always had that that bipolar tendency where the highs were really high, the lows were really low. We were so young, we were very successful. But it wasn't that he was drinking or necessarily doing drugs where it was really, really out of control. It was more that getting into the wrong crowds and distributing it. And so that's, I think, kind of where things started taking a turn. And then we moved to Las Vegas, which is quite interesting because we ended up opening up a landscaping company out there. And he hurt his back and he went to the doctor. And that's when, looking back, that's when I remember everything changing because he had gotten a prescription and somehow he was able to manipulate everything to get more and more and more. And by the end of that, and that was, like I said, like less than a year, he was just getting it on the streets at that point.
Was that prescription the first time of his usage, or was he already using when you met him?
No, I mean, he really was not. I think that once he found that, I think that was the cure for him because he didn't want to try to take any medication for his mental illness. So that's, I think, kind of where it just really went crazy.
So your early relationship was stable and normal and healthy when you first started having kids?
Yes and no. When we found each other, it for me, it worked, and so that was, for me, that was a normal.
Your function was dysfunction.
Exactly. So that's what I was used to. So for me, that was normal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in my relationship, it was very up and down, up and down, up and down. And I stayed for very, very long because that's my comfort zone,
Mm-hmm. How old were your girls at the time?
They were 5 and 8.
And how old were they when their father passed?
5 and 8.
Oh, okay.
That's when they passed. That's when they passed. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you had 2 little girls.
Mm-hmm.
How has that affected them now?
Oh gosh, tremendously. I think I really do. I mean, we've gone through a lot of therapy. We all can talk about it now. Before, for many, many years, it was something that, honestly, I was scared to talk about. I think they were scared to talk about because we just didn't know what to say, And then once things started coming out in therapy, especially with my younger one, and just not knowing who he was. But here's the thing. He was such a good person deep down, He was so good to my kids. And he was just always, when he was on, he was a great dad.
Addicts are good people. They just make bad decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in watching your spouse going through this, what was your own struggle like during this period?
What's interesting is I've been looking back a lot lately, and I think my struggle was major codependency. I wasn't abusing anything at that point. I was just, I think, in fight or flight mode for so long that was my addiction almost. For me, I did not start getting into recovery until after he passed, because that's when I couldn't handle anything anymore after he passed away.
Right.
So is that when your addiction took off, was when he passed away?
Mm-hmm.
And then how long were you active in your addiction?
Gosh, I would say probably 6 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And after 6 years, was there any singular event or that kind of moment of clarity where you just finally said, enough's enough, I can't do this anymore? Did you have one of those, or was it just one of the kind of tapering, after the height of everything, it just kind of tapered off and eventually you got to where you were? Could you explain that a little bit?
It's for a long time, let me back up a little bit. Prior to him passing, I would have a drink here and there. Even when I was younger, I would go out and maybe binge too much, but it would be every couple months. So I never thought I had a problem up until I had a problem. And that was, I've had many moments of clarity. But I think the hardest part for me was just, I remember sitting in Los Angeles and not knowing where I was, how I got there, where my kids were, and thinking, my kids are not they don't have a dad, and they could potentially not have a mom. And I am just running my life to the ground. That was one moment of clarity for me. And I knew that I had to do something because it was just not okay.
You can see that still affects you.
Yeah.
Just that moment of your kids might lose both parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, me not being in recovery myself, but seeing a lot of Jason's journey throughout the years, I'll never forget when Delilah was born, like the confirmation that he got at that moment because of his kid. Like, one, I don't have kids, so I can't speak to it. I can't relate to it, but I know that kids have that power in their parents. It's just a matter of, for lack of better words, seeing through the shower glass. When you actually see what's on the other side and what's happening, they're a huge motivator. I knew that was Jason's. At first, he was doing it for his parents. In the end, he was doing it for his kids.
I knew I had to do it for my kids. I also knew I had to do it for myself. And that was the other thing too. In the beginning, when I had that moment of clarity, it was for my kids. But for me and my journey, ultimately, I knew, because I kept going back to the drink. I kept going back, even though I knew that I was hurting people, because it's so powerful and it takes over, that I knew I had to do it for myself, because if I didn't do it for myself, I wouldn't be here. I would not be here for my kids, my parents, people that, need me.
Right. So when you had that, let's not call it the moment of clarity per se, but when you had that final one, what did you do after that? What steps did you take?
What I did was I looked up some type of program for myself. I had my best friend come to my house when I woke up to her one morning saying, "You're going somewhere." And I said, "No, I'm not. And I said, "I will figure this out." It doesn't work that way. But I did find a program meeting, and I went to that night, and that started my journey.
Was there anything that you heard there that you felt like really spoke to you, or was it just kind of feeling as if this is something you needed?
I got to be honest that it was a complete blur. I just knew that I knew sitting in that room that there were people like me, and that I wasn't crazy, and that I know I'm a good person, but I have to figure this out. And so I knew that I was surrounded by people that have been through what I've been through and that can help me.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, that sounds like a story we've heard all too often, especially from people looking to explore. Or, I'm just going to go check it out, or yeah, so and so is taking me somewhere. Let me go see what they're talking about, and then all of a sudden, it's what started the whole thing. As far as the journey into recovery. So, how long would you say it took you to get to a place where you were then comfortable opening up, being a bit more vulnerable, really processing, your relationship and also the effect on your kids, and kind of getting them into the mix so that they, one, are more educated on what was going on, so it just doesn't seem like something random happened, but two, to keep them off the track of going down that same path potentially?
Gosh, that's a loaded question, because it took me a long time to get really open and honest, because I never was. So it took me really trusting people in that program to give me that safe place. I would say, honestly, at least 2 years for me to really, really. But I knew that if I kept going there and I kept staying with people that were on that same journey with me, that I would be okay. I did a lot of damage to my children. And I know now that, I continue every single day, I continue to try to just be very open and transparent with them so they do feel safe. But for a while, they did not feel safe, and it's one of those things that, it's not about words, it's about action.
Right.
And you have to take that action in any way. People start trusting you when there's action taken.
And switching gears over to your kids and shifting the focus onto them. So with you getting a little bit more aware about what you were dealing with educationally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you either see, or did you see any potential concerns in their behaviors that may have been kind of attributed to the struggles with you and your husband, that they may have picked up just, by witnessing or anything like that, and or afterwards? I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, did you ever see any red flags after the fact while having a bit more education under your belt to be able to identify them?
I think especially now, being in a very clear, open-minded state,
Mm-hmm.
I could tell very early on how much damage I was doing to them, but just by the way they would walk, or, just their confidence, just the quietness with them towards me. But as I became on this journey, it has been amazing to watch. I mean, we have gone through major therapy. There's actually a lot of hospitals around Orange County have programs for kids that have lost loved ones, lost their parents. And so we really started, I knew I had to dig deep with them, because I knew between their dad and then me, I really needed to help them. So now we talk so openly about it. I mean, it is so nice to see. And, now my kids are 21 and 17. And that's all we do. We talk about, all of that, addiction, mental illness. They are part of this journey with me.
That sounds like you got two birds with one stone, in that by creating these open communication channels, you were able to address their trauma and help them process and all of that. But two, I mean, every friend I have that's a girl that I know growing up, they were all fighting with their parents in their teenage years. Mm-hmm. It sounds to me like you were able to kind of chop through that, go straight to the period, like for me in the 20s is when I really started to connect with my parents and, have that open communication and realize that they're my best friends, not just my parents, right? But my teenage years, you couldn't sell me that even if you tried. With that being said, I feel like you did a great job in helping them not only through that situation, but setting them up to be able to communicate, because look at Gen Z nowadays. They can't communicate. They can't even talk about what they're watching on YouTube. It's that bad, right? So definitely kudos to you in establishing
Thank
that.
you.
That's huge.
I question sometimes my 17-year-old. She's funny. She will just tell me things, and I'm like, "You're 17. You should not be telling me these things," But that's how open we are, and it's to the point where she is scared because of the fentanyl crisis and all these different things, and we are so open about all of that because you just don't know.
Right.
And, she has told me things that she has seen at parties and things like that. And we're just very open. And that's probably one of my biggest accomplishments, I will say. And that's because, and only solely because I am in recovery, plain and simple, because that would never have happened.
No, I believe it. I mean, ever since even Jason gave me some tips on things, right? It improved my communication, improved how I process, how I communicate to people, and with that conflict resolution hugely, right? So in talking about your kids and you, as far as therapy went, was that your suggestion or their suggestion, or was it just kind of a mutually decided necessity?
It's interesting. I was actually in therapy with my boyfriend at the time, and the therapist had recommended that I go to therapy with my children. And so that's how that whole thing started.
Okay.
Now our therapist, we call her any hour of the night. We text her. Both my girls have her phone number. She's part of our family really now. It's quite funny.
Gotcha. And I just want to talk on the family therapy for a little bit, because we've never really had a guest on here to talk what that process looked like.
Yeah.
So how was that experience in your eyes?
Gosh, in my eyes, it was ugly. It was hard. It was hard to sit in a room with, like, you guys, and your kids are just crying and saying, "Mom, please," and, bringing up things. And, as you want to forget those things that you've done, right? You want to forget those things. But the only way to get through those things is to sit there with them and acknowledge things that, we have done to these children. And that was very, very hard. But over time, it came to the point where we would laugh about some things, and how open my kids were to really feeling comfortable enough to say, Mom, that really hurt me. And we wouldn't have been able to say that at home, really. Now we can, but we've found tools
Right.
through our therapist to give us, to help us through that.
It's almost like this was a blessing for you guys. There's not a lot of people have the type of communication that you have with your children. And so it's almost like all of this pain has been a blessing in the end, really.
I've never really thought about that until I'm like actually sitting here.
Well, one thing I can tell you is that one of our other members, Jana, she's working on a 7th and 8th grade curriculum around substance abuse for parents and kids. And it's not for parents to help educate their kids. It's to help educate both of them to create those communication channels that you're talking that you have, so that when there is an issue, either on the parent side or the child side, whether it's, hey, I saw this at school, or the parents, hey, this happened at work, they're able to have clear communication so that everybody's on the same page. If feelings are being stepped on, people are aware, and it's helping the kids establish a voice in kind of a perception where, kids were just meant to follow directives, right? Well, when the parents are the ones giving the directives and they're not giving the right ones, well, then who's to call them out? This program helps do that. So to Ariel's point, what you went through years ago, we might be late in catching up now, but it's what's happening because it's a huge need.
Correct. I love that. I really, really love that. I think it's, I think all kids, especially that program, I think that's something that, gosh, we need to spread that awareness and spread that. It's major, especially right now.
Yeah. The past is the past. The importance is identifying the problem and moving on, which is going to shift us. So we like to focus on the solution, right? What would you say is a good, either solution or action or direction for a solution that you might suggest to our audience that, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It doesn't have to be anything expensive or time consuming, but something that they could do in this moment to help or get them to the next step? What would you recommend?
I got to be honest, I'm going through a lot right now. And I know what I do right now is I will either go in a quiet room, go in a bathroom, just take a minute and just pray. Because I'm not in control of any of this. That's what got me into a lot of my problems is we all think we have control over everything around us and we don't. And so for me, just to stop and pray, and say, you know what, you are in control. Lead me where you need me to lead me. My other thing too is getting out of my own head, going and helping somebody, doing something that is not where I'm thinking about myself constantly, going and helping in any way you can. Anyway, there's so many, even taking the cart from, the elderly woman at the grocery store and helping them put that away. Things like that. It takes 2 seconds, but we're not thinking about ourselves.
Yeah, no, I like that you said that. For me personally, I feel like when I shift the focus and the spotlight onto somebody else, through like helping them or giving back, one, it usually makes my problems look much smaller than they actually are and puts them into perspective. But two, it's also, for lack of better words, kind of a distraction. You feel good in the moment. You create this positive energy that I believe when you have positive energy, you can do positive things. When you're in a negative mindset, nothing good's coming out of it.
100%.
So get in the right mindset, carry it throughout your day. And who knows what you might run into at that point, and it could be the thing that changes the rest of your life for the better.
It's all about practicing it, right? You can start over 1,000 times during your day. One bad thought gets in your head, get out of yourself. You can continually do that over and over and over throughout the day.
No, you're absolutely right. No, this is amazing. And we went much longer. I just looked at the clock and it was at 16 minutes and here we are at 30. So Danielle, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to follow you, look you up, learn a little bit more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. My handle's at dprovot, DPROVOT. The T is silent. That would be the best way.
Perfect.
Thank you so much. This was so great learning about you and you are so wise.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing with us and letting us know how people can help open communication with their kids. It's so important today. So young people need their parents. So when parents are healthy and teaching them how to communicate, it's really, really special. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us on another week. And for those that haven't, we have a big golf tournament coming up on May 27th at Harris Creek here in Orange County. So please go to www.epicjourneyraising.com to sign up for foursomes or sponsorships. And we hope to see you out there. Thank you, everybody.
And thank you, everybody, for letting me host with you today, Alex. And this was fun. So hopefully I get to do it again.
Perfect.